So,
So, hello and welcome to our show, The Awakening, here on WGSN-DB, the Going Bold and Going Solo Network. The information and opinions expressed on this show are just that, the opinions of the individual speaking based on their individual personal experiences. They are not intended to diagnose and do not constitute professional advice or recommendations. So, you know, the difficulty, the pain, the stress, and the struggle that divorcing men and women go through. Well, there is a way to find peace and keep your sanity, all while assisting your lawyer, saving you thousands of dollars in this process. My name is Tina Huggins. I'm your divorce coach specialist, divorce planning specialist, restorative family mediator, and conflictual co-parenting coach. And so my guest today is Jose. And we were talking about his last name just a few minutes ago. I'm not even going to attempt it. Like he tells me, yeah, it's even difficult in Spanish, right? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Jose. Jose is not just a coach, but an iPEC-certified life coach who specializes in empowering single parents recovering from narcissistic abuse. Jose is leveraging his background as a former businessman and current hotel owner from Mexico and helps single parents navigate the challenging transitions into single parenthood. Jose's focus is on rebuilding the single parent's identity, achieving their goals, and most importantly, participating and taking care of their self. Jose does Jose does all of this by providing crucial support beyond traditional therapy to help parents thrive for themselves and, of course, for their children. So welcome, Jose. Thank you for being here.
thank you for having me, Tina. And the last name is Escarcega. I am Jose Escarcega,
Right.
and it wonders the fun part is that my son, who's English speaking, he pronounces our last name perfectly, and I'm like, wow, that's a surprise for me.
Some of us can, but I don't know, maybe because I do come from a Hispanic background that it just was very odd for me to not be able to say your last name. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not even going to attempt and butcher that.
Oh, don't worry about it.
So I'm going to be honest. I talked to you earlier just before we came on the show, and I want our audience to kind of know this. I asked Jose to send me some questions so that we would have a direction to go. And Spirit just kind of, as I was putting the show together, Spirit said, no, we're going to focus on the fact that Jose comes in to this space as a man. He's in this specific coaching space, a single parent coach as a man, which is very rare for us to see. And that's very important. For those of you who don't know that are watching now, I usually focus my work or do focus my work towards men that have been involved in abusive relationships. The majority of my clients are women, but men just don't have the support that women generally have. And as Jose and I were talking, I wanted to make sure that I explained why this is so important to me. So single parents, being a single parent is very difficult. And as you're going to hear us talk, when we come from a culture like the Mexican culture, from Mexico, or like I explained to Jose, old world culture, where there's still old world thinking, especially about parenthood, it can be very difficult, especially for the men in that culture. And I had a really close friend who I was raised in a Hispanic culture, and she was married to a Mexican man. She was Hispanic herself, but she was American and he was from Mexico. And they were living here, and he got her involved in some bad drug stuff. She ended up in jail, and that's about when I met her. That's about when we started working together to rebuild her. And she struggled as a single parent, and he ended up going back to Mexico, and unbeknownst to her, he took another wife. When she went back down there to see him, of course, that negative energy and the way he treated her while she was down there was just horrific to her. And as a single mom, she came back and I talked to her briefly about some of her parenting issues. And she just couldn't handle it. And she took her life. And I have her children, whom I call my godchildren, because I coming from that group and being very close to their mom, I was able to work with the entire family as we put her service together. And her two youngest daughters were just heading into high school, and now they have no father and no mother. And so now the oldest daughter, she kind of tried to take everybody under their wing, and I did my best to help. But I can, looking back, I don't know how, and I'm going to honor her. Her name was Andrea Armstrong. And I'm going to explain how I don't think that she was a bad single mom at all. She had four children, three girls and one boy, and all four of them, 4 out of 4, were turned out to be amazing, not just children, but they're amazing adults and they're amazing parents now. They're raising their own children and they're moving on in their life. And one of them is a single parent and struggling because she's coming not just culturally from one side, but the father of her children is culturally from another side. And so there's some issues that she's facing as a single parent. So I'm super excited that you're here with me, Jose, and that we get to kind of dig into a little bit of the differences, specifically from the male side of historically old culture or old world culture. So thanks again for being here, Jose.
Thanks again for having me, and thank you for sharing this story. It's like so hard. I'm sorry for your loss. And this is something that really hits me hard, and it's very emotional because we can see, like, from any perspective, like, it doesn't matter the gender, if you're male, female, or LGBTQ, it's
Mhm.
hard being a single parent. And we often face this reality that as a single parents, we face this guilt of not feeling enough, not feeling good enough of being a parent. Even you're doing their best for your kids, there's always something that lingers and it tells you, like, I'm not doing enough. I have to be better because you're a single parent. You don't have another partner to help you through your journey, but it can get complicated sometimes. Like in this case, that's an extreme. And Andre, your friend, went through a very complicated stage, and that's how hard it can be to be a single parent. It's so much pressure on yourself that it can lead to this output.
hmm And, I had talked to her the night before she did this, and I knew she was off, and I also knew I couldn't reach her that night. So when her phone rang the next morning, I knew. I knew when I saw her name pop up that that wasn't her on the other side. And when you and I talked about this just before I turned on the recording, you had tears in your eyes, and I was able to talk, tell you my story. This time, I struggled to tell that story. I had to fight back the tears as I was talking about that because her children are amazing children. Oh my gosh, as parents, they're thriving and doing a great job. The one of them who is now a single mom, she is going through the court aspects of daddy wanting kids, and they're in two separate states and they're further apart than they originally started off, and so it's a really difficult time. And so she's talking with me and I'm helping her like I did her mom through some of the single parenting stuff. I'm helping her more as a mom figure. But coming in, my late husband was a lot like you, very wonderful, caring man who was definitely the man, and yet was more maternal to his children than I've ever seen a man ever be. He loved his children so much. And so you and I talked about this the very first time we talked about you becoming a single parent. So and the fact that you're working in narcissistic recovery. So kind of tell us a little bit about why you're working in that arena.
Oh, it's always hard to become a single parent, and especially in this case of Andrea, where we can relate, and it's totally understandable that sometimes single parents go into all of these dark spaces that we don't have many resources as single parents. We have therapy, which is great, which brings you from dysfunctional to functional, and you can go on with your life, but still you have all of these difficulties of being a single parent. And that's when coaching comes up. What happens after you are functional again? What happens with your life when you are like, okay, I'm a single parent. So what do I do now? You have to learn how to be a single parent. You have to learn how to deal with everything. It's a new life. I have this community where I was talking about this becoming a new person, and there was this member who said, I didn't choose to become a new person. I was happy with my life. I was happy with my kids. But it's not a new person per se, but you have to adapt to a new lifestyle. You have to work on yourself because you have more responsibility now. You have to take care of yourself, which is very important because your kids deserve to have a good parent. But sometimes we forget about self-care. We always put the kids first, but we forget that self-care can help you become a better person, and you're going to be better for your kids.
Yes.
So when it comes to coaching and how we talk to the parents, it's just we create a new plan for your life, what your life is going to look ahead, and kind of like create this scenario where you see yourself thriving in single parenthood, and then find that feeling where you're like, oh, this is how I want to be. We grasp to that feeling and then we work towards it. So you can create a new plan, you set new goals, and care for your kids, because we as single parents, we struggle with a lot of things. We have to deal with work, with bills, with emotions from your kids, from yourself, from your co-parent. Co-parenting also, it's one of the hardest struggle that we have. Like all of my clients, they always bring this topic to the table because it can make you feel um, sad as well, dealing with another co-parent that is not attuned in the best interest of the child. So you have to work on yourself, work on the kids, and work on not engaging, not reacting, and not giving yourself up to the other co-parents' demands, which sometimes are not the best.
Hmm. And I dealt with a client this morning. This specific client's actually in Norway, and we got to talking about the old world culture, very similar to, and we'll get into this a little bit, how the men in Mexico look at life. So her husband is Norwegian and she's American, and she lives there. And we got to talking about how he wants to raise the kids and how she wants to raise the kids. It's two different ways, which is kind of what you're talking about. And as a co-parenting coach myself, I help that, and like what you're talking about and what I just spoke about with her is not called co-parenting. We can't, co-parenting is when both households have the same bedtime, same routine, do the same thing. That's co-parenting. That's when we can really work with our ex at parenting and raising our children. But when we've gone through abuse, and we see this in old world cultures like Mexico and in this case, Norway, where the men are generally not the diaper changers, and they don't bottle feed the babies. They hand them over to their mother to take care of them. And then they just kind of help them. And especially if they've got boys, you've got to be a man and they've got to teach them
Mhm.
to be a man. And so we can't co-parent when we're opposite like that. So we call that parallel parenting.
Yep.
So And I think that you're helping your clients, one, be better parallel parenting parents because you're teaching them how to take care of themselves.
Sure. And like you mentioned, parallel parenting is the way to do it. And sometimes it's hard just to get in that track because to do parallel parenting, you have to create healthy boundaries because you have to know that is your house, your rules. You are doing the best for your kids. And even if you're not in tune with your co-parent, like you mentioned, co-parenting is when you have a good relationship and both work into the child's best interest. We have to find a way to make it survive. You have to provide this safe space for your kid. You have to provide with this container with love and nurturing for them to be happy because your kids only need one stable parent to thrive through life. You are the safe space, you are the loving place. And going back to what you mentioned about all cultures, being a single dad, it's not easy at all because and personally me, I come from this Mexican culture, northern Mexican culture, which is like very attuned to old Texas cowboy style, very manly, very manhood. And the way they raised us is like the man has to be the provider. The man has to be tough. The man can't complain. You can't cry. You have to be a man. So being in tune with your emotions was often seen as a sign of weakness. And learning that it's a big step. Personally, I just learned to cry in 2023 after being like I was a businessman back when I was in Mexico and I was like on this work environment where I have to be like tough. I also had a cattle ranch, so I have to be like the tough guy and dealing with all of these animals and hard work. So they don't teach you to be in touch with your emotions
Mhm.
because it's seen as a sign of weakness. And like you mentioned, the man doesn't change diapers. In our culture, sometimes it's seen like a sign of pride not to change any diapers on your kid.
Mhm.
That's the woman's role. And I didn't understand until I got into all of this that I was like, wow, that's not good because your kids also deserve to have a dad that is involved in their development. It's proven that the kid that has a good relationship with their father, it works differently. Each parent has their role, but the mother is the nurturing space and the father established this connection by the rough play and the brain of your kid of your children is developing in a different way because they have the two sides. But like you mentioned, now that I'm a single dad, and it brings me joy that I've been seeing more single dads involved in their kids development. And that's great because actually just yesterday I just met a single dad. We were playing tennis and we approached and we were talking and the way I saw how he was caring for his son and just trying to coach him and having this relationship, it was happy. I was happy to see that. And we're learning. We're learning from what we used to know or our parents used to know how to parent our kids. If we go back to the 80s and 90s, we were happy because we were outside so much time. But the truth is that we didn't have that much of a connection with our parents because they were always busy working or doing some other stuff. Then we had fun with them, but there was not this strong bond or connection that we are now more conscious about it because we're learning how this bonds and connection creates a different outcome in our kids.
Yes. And as you're talking, I'm revisiting Puerto Vallarta, where my husband and I love to go. And you see all these children that are just running around the street. They're playing with dogs, they're playing with other kids, and you don't see the moms and dads. And it's basically because the moms and dads are working, they're doing their thing. And so the kids are left on their own. And I remember as a child myself, I was like 7 years old, and I ended up taking my bicycle 4 miles up the road to my grandmother. My grandmother knew I was coming. My mom didn't have a clue where I was all day long. She had no clue where I was. And that's just the way that old cultures kind of are. The kids just fend for themselves for most of the day.
Yeah, we were just outside surviving.
Right, right.
You just have to be back home before
I know.
the lights go out.
Right, right.
Yeah, and it's great. I think these new generations that we are raising are going to be amazing because we are craving the outside time, but we also nurturing this connection with them. So we are present with them and having fun together outside. So we're more conscious about that. They need to be outside, away from the screens, but also they need to have a parent who is in touch with their emotions. Also, like, remember, like back in the days when you fell down and you scraped your knee and you were crying, they were like, "Oh no, no, it's okay, don't cry, just man up." Nowadays, we know that it hurts, and we are just being there with them, validating their pain, and just helping them stand up again and keep on moving forward. But they have the support from ourselves, and that a lot of trauma comes from us as kids or during their childhood, withstanding pain by yourself.
Yeah. And as you talk, my dad was a cowboy. So I was raised on a farm ranch, and you bet if you got bucked off your horse, you just got back on your horse. Don't cry about it, whatever. Now, I was lucky that my dad was in touch with this feeling. So he would go out when the cattle were being born and he would cry. That was his time with God. Calves would hit the ground and he would see that as miracles. So I had that wonderful part of my dad. But another side of single parenting is having to cook and clean and change the diapers or things like that. My dad had divorced my mom, and he was on his in between his second and third wife or something to that effect. And he calls me and he says, how long do I cook an egg? I'm making hard boiled eggs. And I said, well, you like to have your eggs super hard. So I would do them for 6 to 8 minutes, Dad. He says, 6 to 8 minutes in the microwave. Dad, you don't do eggs in the microwave. It's like I
Microwave.
explained the whole thing. And then he calls my sister and she says, so how's the new washer and dryer? And he says, well, the dryer's not really drying very well. And she goes, well, when was the last time you changed the lint trap? And he goes, what's a lint trap? So these are things that single parents have to do.
Yeah, you're juggling so many stuff around yourself. And like you mentioned, my son has a personal chef who wakes up at 6 in the morning, cooks his lunch and then sends him to school. And I'm proud of it, like I remember changing diapers all around the city, like going to New York and just your kid needs to change the diapers. So I would just make it work, get him back in the car or just whatever. I was like the fastest diaper changer in the city. I was like, okay, dude, let's do it. Okay, let's go. And it was fun because this connection that we have is great. And I was also a stay-at-home dad when I was waiting for my work permit. So I understood a lot of the struggle that single moms go through because being in charge of the house is not easy. It sounds really easy, like, oh, you don't do anything. You just have to clean the house, like, well, clean the house, cook, prepare everything for the children. It's a big task. So I in Mexico or Spanish, they would say, I take my hat off for the single moms who had done or had gone through it. And it was harder back in the days because single moms were seen as different. Like it could even seem like a failure sometimes. Like, oh, you were not able to keep your family, and that was a hard thing to put on them because most
Yes.
of them, I'm sorry, most of them didn't have the courage just to walk away from a abusive relationship because they want to stay together for the kids because that's how they taught us that family has to be a couple and the kids.
Hmm.
So if you were by yourself, you were like the odd one out.
Yes. And you're talking about the single mom. And earlier you had mentioned, about the dads coming into the, you know, becoming a single dad. Uh, and I can tell you, coming from martial arts instructing, I had lots of kids that were in my class that came from divorced parents where they had a single parent father and a single parent mother. And I can tell you, and this is important for our viewers, for you women that think that as moms, we need to have more parenting time than dad because we're the mom. Just like in Mexico, that's the basic way it is. Dads don't single parent down there, the mom's
Mhm.
single. And it's just super important for you moms and then you dads really to get this too, that the kids that I taught in Taekwondo, the best kids, the ones that did the best, that did the least amount of in trouble push-ups, were those kids that had dad in their life. If dad even wasn't a great dad, as long as he was in their life, those kids were better. I had some rock star single moms, and those kids would just be little shits every once in a while. For her, for me, they would end up doing more push-ups than everybody else. I'd pass out 100 to them every once in a while because they would just get mad, throw stuff, and throw a fit. And those, again, with dad in the picture, they were better kids. They were more respectful. They learned faster and more responsive. So dads are very important.
Yes, both parents are important, but also dads have a different role. And especially if you have the emotional maturity, your kid will be successful
Mm,
because they see how you handle stuff. When we are doing the parenting, like I tell my clients what that we are doing the parenting, but we are less conscious about it because your kids are watching how you deal with life. Just even the simple things. And if somebody crosses you on traffic, how you react to that, they will see. And they will just, um, as the word, like imitate, or they will like,
imitate.
yeah, their your behavior. How do you react to stressful situation? How do you react when you are happy? How do you deal with other people? Everything is they're watching.
Yes. So true. So true. And they mimic things. And I have told parents this so much. Don't talk in front of your children. Even if your child isn't old enough to talk yet, don't talk about their dad or mom in front of them in a negative way. Don't say bad things in front of them because they're listening. They're
Hmm.
listening and they're going to mimic this. And they may not mimic it in front of you, but they come to my Taekwondo class and they would mimic it. I'd know exactly where those little statements came from.
Yeah, and then you put a lot of stress on them, even though they don't tell you, but they're stressed about like if you talk about bad about the other parent, they will feel this need to take sides because oh, my mom is talking about my dad or my dad is talking about my mom. And we just got to be careful of our words because our words is how we are shaping their future. We are actually shaping their inner voice, how they talk to themselves they will remember. So we're forging that right now in their during their childhood. I
Mhm.
still hear my inner voice from when I was a child, and I'm like, no, 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 this you have to reparent yourself as well. Like now bringing this topic, is that every time you get a trigger from how your kid behaves, that is a clear indicator that you have to heal some stuff from your childhood as well.
Hmm. So I want to kind of go back. Before we started filming, you were talking about, in Mexico, how the mom, the matriarch of the family,
Mhm.
passes down, all the information to both boys and girls in her family, her grandchildren, the nieces and nephews. So kind of talk a little bit about that.
Sure, sure. And this analogy came from watching a movie from my son, with my son. We were watching Encanto, which is a Hispanic movie, and it's beautiful. The movie is great. It's very happy, very colorful. And he was said, I want to watch it again. So we watched it a couple of times. And by the third time, I think, I started watching this movie with different eyes. I was like, wait, like once you put the coaching glasses on this, it was like, okay, there's the matriarch, which is the grandmother, and there's this family around her, and each of the member of the family has a special power. There was this girl who's the strongest, the princess, the guy who can shift his like a shapeshifter.
Mhm.
Then the main character, she didn't get like this special power because every time their initiation was like having a door, which was their special power. So I was like, okay, these powers, they are childhood trauma.
Hmm. Hmm.
The strong girl was never not strong enough. The princess was not perfect. The shapeshifter was a people pleaser. Bruno, I still can't um, figure out what he was, but the main character, Mirabelle, she was not good enough. That's why she didn't get a door, and she was kind of like put to the side every time. And then you get to the core of the story when they show you that the grandma is kind of angry at the world because their grandparent, the the partner sacrificed himself in order for them to survive. So she grew up with this anger of being alone and having to deal with this house by herself. Like she had to run the family by herself. And then it's totally understandable that this person have to deal with so much stuff that they become kind of like abrasive with the world. So they keep on passing this trauma to the other generations. And in this movie, there's a scene where the grandma and Mirabelle are in a river. So then Mirabelle approached the grandma and she started acknowledging her suffering and she started opening it up to what happened. And then that's where healing started. I see Mirabelle as a coach, that she was coaching her grandma into like getting back to life. So after all of this healing happens, the house, the casita, it becomes a greater house and everybody's happier and they change their traditions. So it it changed the whole family just by acknowledging the suffering and just validating the grandma. But that happens in a lot of cultures. The matriarchs sometimes had to deal with everything because the father was providing, and she's so inundated with problems and she has to deal with everything that it comes into trauma.
Hmm. Hmm. So just that story, kind of, talking about the matriarch, it kind of reminds me of my dad's mother, and she was a matriarch, and dads don't take care of children. And she would be upset with me when I would leave to get a job, go to work and leave my children with their dad. She says, "Oh no, you need to bring them over here when you leave." And I'm like, "Well, he's home. he can take care of him. And my ex-husband was very good changing diapers. He come from a large family. He was a great dad. And it's that matriarch, though, that teaches, women should have teaching jobs or hairdo jobs. They should be, in those two professions because then they can always find a job wherever their husband moves for his work. And it's like, well, and my sister says, oh no, that's not the way my life is going to be. My husband is going to move with me for my job. And that's exactly the way her life was. She ended up moving throughout the US for her job. And it's that matriarch thing that you're talking about. And then I want to touch, and because we're getting ready to have about 10 minutes left, I think the part that was most important that you said was getting touch with themselves. So we talked earlier before we turned on the camera about crying and getting in touch with our feelings. And that's what you talked about earlier as being so important for the work that you did.
It is really important. It is really important, and that's when healing happens. When you sit down with your pain and you acknowledge what happened, it's not for everybody. Like you have to sit down and cry a lot as well because, we maybe our parents loved us, but they didn't know better on how to raise us. So we have to deal with a lot of things ourselves. And now that we are parenting our kids in a very more present, sometimes it triggers that I wish I would have had that, a loving parent with me that plays with me, that comes with me. Like I do a lot of things with my son. We even have a garden and we harvest our own vegetables, and I show him how what we pick up from the garden, we will just cook it and eat it. That's great. I wish I would have that. But when when you get in touch with your feelings, you have to deal with a lot of discomfort.
Mm,
And some people will avoid it, especially in the male side, because you get so busy that you don't get time to work on yourself. Because when you are resting, everything comes to you. So some people might just overflow their life with work, with responsibilities that don't have to go back to deal with these emotions that you have going on. And that cycle repeats until the end of your life.
hmm
Just
So true.
pausing yourself and just understanding what's going on inside of you, it takes a big effort and it's not easy. But once you do it, life becomes different.
You become a better person. I don't know how much we had talked the first time about my loss of my husband back in June of last year. Um, but it's been a time that I've had to get in touch with my emotions in a different way. I can go back through my divorce and I could tell you, boy, going through that was horrible. And the loss of my dream husband, is a horrible experience to go through, but my emotional body is in so much better place. And why? Because I'm working with coaches and I'm working with therapists. And of all the things that I could suggest anyone ever do, in the case with single parenting, I think we need help, period. It takes a village to help. And in this case, we need somebody. And I'm going to touch into the Mexican culture here, the fact that you're a Mexican male that's a single parent that changes diapers, you know, how much better can that be opposite of the way the culture is? Your life is just totally opposite of the culture you come from.
Yeah. I was actually, I'm sorry for your loss. I remember when we spoke
Yeah.
about your the loss of your husband, and grief is hard. Like you have to make time to deal with these emotions. And like you mentioned, being a Mexican single dad, changing diapers and being attuned with my emotions for my son, it was going against everything that I learned or that they taught me. But I'm relearning to be a single dad. I'm relearning to be in touch with my emotions. I'm relearning to parent myself as well.
Mm,
Because when you're parenting, you're also parenting yourself. And that's when the magic comes, because you are becoming a great parent for your son, and but also your inner child is growing. You get to work with all of these suppressed emotions and everything that happened through your childhood, and you are becoming a better person for your kid, because that's where we have to work on ourselves. We love our kids, but we also must not forget about working in ourselves. And
mm,
now that we're talking about grief, that is one of the hardest parts of divorce or becoming a single parent. The grief of letting go of this perfect marriage that you had in mind. You miss that person, but you have to let go of that because that's not your reality anymore.
mhm. So true. And so as we get ready to wrap this up, Jose, um, it, all of your contact information is going to be below, but you have like a class or a program that you take people through. So can you explain that for our viewers so that they know, and then tell them how to get in touch with you so that they can get into that program?
Sure. Yeah, I created this community for single parents. It's called Solo Parent Superpowers, which is a community where single parents can join and get support from other single parents, or just there's power also in telling your story. I remember when this idea came up, it was during one of my workshops, and I asked an open question to one of the guests, and then one parent replied, then another backed up, and then they validated their emotions, they shared the story, and another followed through, sharing their story, a different perspective, and suddenly I was also participating in the dynamic. So this was like pure community empowerment. You can lift another parent's mood, but also
Mm,
seeing how other single parents are making it through life, it's also inspiring. And just telling your story, just letting it all out, it's empowering, because getting in touch with other single parents that knows the struggle, they can help you, they can support you. And we also have a Q&A every now and then with experts like you, which I'm going to invite you to the community as well. And we need this because for me, being a single dad in a different country, starting from zero, sometimes you can feel alone. And once you start getting in touch with other people who knows the struggle, you get lifted. And that's the purpose of the community, like help other single parents and just bring a library of valuable resources for them to go through life.
yes,
The
definitely.
it's the name is single Solo Parent Superpowers, and it's in school.com. We're gonna drop the info in the link. And it's good to see how other parents go through life, and also getting some support from people who went through that and made it.
Hmm. So very true. And so that's important. And I think that understanding that, and just again, so that all of our viewers know, all of Jose's information will be down below the show in the show notes. So please look for that information and talk to Jose. And I encourage all of our cultural people, specifically that from the Mexican culture, to reach out to Jose because he understands that cultural difference. And especially if you're a father, and I love the fact that you say coming into a whole nother country. I lived in another country where at least you can speak English. And when I got there, I couldn't speak German. So just getting used to those new cultures. And that was hard enough. And I was married. So being a
Yeah.
single dad in this new area, it's got to be very difficult. So I invite everybody to reach out to Jose for that. So I myself am a certified divorce coach and I specialize in high conflict divorce. And I'm certified. That means I'm trained in the complexities divorce. And I can tell you, I went through the end of my marriage was a high conflict divorce. I ended up with a broken hand, separated ribs, and dislocated leg. My father was almost murdered, and my late husband went through a whole mirage of torture in his relationship. So not only am I schooled, I also have lived through this and understand that. You can reach me through my email at coachtinalyn@gmail.com. That's CoachTinalynn@gmail. My website is divorcecoachspecialist.com. And you can find me on social media, Facebook under Tina Lynn Huggins. That's Huggins. On LinkedIn under Tina Huggins. On Instagram under Divorce Coach Tina Lynn. And on TikTok under Divorce Tina. So, Jose, can you give our viewers a last bit of advice here?
Sure. Let me give you a piece of advice and that you're not alone. Like get in touch with friends, family, because sometimes it's just hard to reach out and just asking for help seems like a big task. But let me tell you that people on the other side, they want to help you. You just have to make the question, ask the question, and they will be able to help you. Like just if it's hard for you to ask for help, just start with small things like, hey, can you help me out with my kids for 20 minutes or 5 minutes, or let's go to a play date or whatever you need to do. And then you will start building the habit because you can help also another single parent.
Amen to that. Amen. And so just like I said just before, I want you as a single parent, and specifically if you're a cultural dad stepping into this new role of single parenting, please reach out to Jose. I had him come on here just for you. So please reach out to him, talk to him, get his help, guidance, anything. And you can talk with him that first time and just find out what he has to offer. So please reach out to him. So
And
go ahead.
oh yeah, I was gonna say thank you, and I just want to let you know that all single parents, especially single dads from other cultures, that once you start getting in touch with your emotions and getting involved with your kids, you will also become a kid and have fun as a kid with your children. So enjoy this journey together and get in touch with them. Every time I see other single dads sharing these moments, we all end up playing with our kids in the playground as we were all kids. So that's a fun thing to do.
So awesome. And so that all of you understand, as we go through divorce, and like I talked about with my friend, whom I want to honor her and her children, Andrea Armstrong, her children, Raynette, Daniel, Leslie, and Maria. They are wonderful, wonderful people with wonderful, wonderful families, and I honor them. But they are here in my life because Andrea committed suicide. If you get to that place, please reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. Simple number 988. Just reach out. It's the same number for here as it is in Canada. Talk to somebody. Let them talk you off that ledge. Please don't leave your children and your loved ones behind to hurt worse than you are right now. So you can also call that National Prevention Hotline in the Netherlands at 113. I don't want you to be alone. When you're in a situation and you need the police, here in the US, it's 911. And in the Netherlands, it's 999. And in the UK, it's 112. Get the police there, press charges. This is your key out of that relationship. Don't drop those charges. Keep the charges pressed, get restraining orders, and get that divorce. Once you drop those charges, oftentimes the abuse on the other side is much worse than it was before you put the charges. So this is your key out. I also want you to know that if you are dealing or know somebody dealing with domestic violence, please call a domestic violence hotline at 800-799-7233. That number again is 800-799-7233. Please like, comment, and share this information so it can help others. Thank you so much for being my guest here today, Jose.
Thank you so much for having me, Tina, and looking forward to hear more of what you do.
Yes. Thank you and blessings to